I guess we will get started in the interest of time, and if we have any wanderers, that's perfectly okay. This is the handout that Jenny had forwarded to me. I don't know if you all had the opportunity to read it, but it's your third quarter. And we memorized it and we recite it every morning, right? And basically, the gist of this is not only balance, but small changes. And I think that's probably one of the most difficult things for people who don't inherently eat well to grasp. They either feel like they have to be all the way on the wagon or all the way off the wagon. And this handout, I've read it a couple of times now, really tries to emphasize small changes. You know, switching out your dairy, your high-fat dairy for low-fat, making some of your whole grain choices, half of your starches whole grains, that kind of thing. And again, we read this stuff all over the place. I'm going to try and make it a little more manageable to you today with my handout, which I hope all of you have. And I just kind of wanted to elaborate on some of their points, about the fruits and the vegetables and the various dairies and what all that good stuff that typically comes up. And certainly if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. One of the things I get asked probably daily is, what's the big deal with the fruits and vegetables, Jen? Like, can I just eat a V8, or can I take my Juice Plus supplements? Like, do I really have to eat these things? They're irritating, they rot in my refrigerator. Do I have to have them? And the answer is yes. You have to have them for a couple of reasons. Your kids have to have them, your spouses have to have them, everybody has to have them. I listed 4 reasons. They're the same 4 reasons that are reiterated in your quarterly newsletter. They are low in calories relative to your other food groups. Okay? It's always relative to something else. They're lower in calories than some of your other food groups. They're higher in fiber than your other food groups. Okay? They're not higher in fiber than themselves, obviously. They all roughly have about 5 grams per cup as a classification of both fruits and vegetables. They all help fight disease. They have something called phytonutrients or antioxidants in them that are components that when we ingest them, they actually neutralize free radicals or the disease-causing carcinogens that circulate not only in the air, but in our bodies through oxidative stress. So if you are a smoker, or you live with a smoker, or you even exercise, believe it or not, or you're stressed most of the time, or you eat badly, you are constantly creating an oxidative, what they call an oxidative stress, that causes and has the potential to cause disease. It ages the body prematurely, it gives us gray hair and wrinkles and all that good stuff. Some of that happens just from being us and from being our ages, and some of it happens because of our lifestyle and how we eat. And so fruits and vegetables actually help neutralize that. If you ever listen to like infomercials for skincare or for hair care, they have these vitamins in them. Vitamin C in large quantities, vitamin A in large quantities, vitamin E in large quantities. These are the things that if we just eat them, they will come naturally, okay? When they tell you to smear avocado all over your face because it's a mask, that's because avocado is rich in A and it's rich in C and it's got great nutrient potential. So if we just ate them as much as we smeared them across our bodies, we'd be in good shape. And then finally, they don't have any kind of trans fat or saturated fat or even cholesterol in them. Fruits and vegetables are naturally void of all those things. From an allergen perspective, they're also void of gluten, they're void of soy, they're void of dairy. So if you have any kind of allergy thing going on in your household, those are always a great go-to. People who have allergies always say, what am I supposed to eat? There's nothing for me to eat. Start with your fruits and vegetables. We as Americans don't get enough anyway. Your handout actually indicates that they want you to have 3 to 4, I think it was, or maybe even as high as 5 cups of these things each and every day. And that's not a bad rule of thumb. It's supposed to be 3 of your fruits, if you look at the food guide pyramid, and it's supposed to be 4 of your vegetables, according to that. So anywhere in between is all good. And you can split hairs. You can definitely talk about whether it should be canned, or should it be frozen, or should it be fresh, should it be organic? And all of those are very viable questions, but don't avoid eating them because you don't know the answers to them. Okay, don't avoid the whole thing altogether and use that sort of as your scapegoat. In my opinion, frozen vegetables are just as great as fresh. 9 times out of 10, they're better. They're better from a cost-effective standpoint, and they're fresher. And if any of you garden, you know that when you garden and you have things coming in too quickly, you blanch them and you freeze them. That's exactly what Hanover does. That's what Bird's Eye does. They pick them fresh, they blanch them, and they freeze them, and they ship them off to your local grocery store. It's really no different than if you were doing it in your own garden, okay? As opposed to being shipped from Guatemala and this is horrible, we just got kiwi from Costco. And I said to my husband, I go, what do you suppose the date 6/20/12 means? He goes, I think it's the date they were picked. And I'm like, that's unbelievable. Like, it's August the 7th. And I think our kiwis were picked 6 weeks ago. But I think that's how it happens. So if you have the ability to have something frozen, don't necessarily view it as a bad thing. Remember, freezing is a natural method of preservation. Okay? With the respects to the protein needs, this is always a pretty big topic. Everybody who exercises thinks they need large volumes of protein. But the truth of the matter is you only need large volumes of protein if you were doing cardiovascular style exercise in excess of 60 minutes a day. Beyond that, your protein needs are just like everybody else's. Very few of us have a larger need for protein. Protein can be very difficult for our kidneys. In the long run, it can cause kidney stones, lots of nitrogen waste products from eating a lot of protein. Protein definitely has its place in the diet. I have the equation there for you. It's 0.8 grams per kilo of your body weight. Comes out to roughly 60 to 70 grams for the average individual a day. I mean, it's not very much. I have also the conversion there for you that each ounce of protein is roughly 5 to 7 grams of protein. So if you do the math, and I said 70 grams of protein a day, and they're each worth 7 grams, that's roughly 10 ounces. That's, I don't know, 3 little pieces of something. So it doesn't take much to get your protein needs met. The big push for protein in the media and out there in terms of dieting is that it does take a little longer for it to digest in our bodies. So protein gives us that feeling of sensation, and we feel full and very satisfied. So it's not necessarily a bad thing if you're trying to lose weight, but you do want to monitor how much you're eating, and you don't want to negate other food groups just because you're taking in too much protein. Depending on the sources of your protein, it has its own issues. You've got the sodium nitrate that's used to preserve lunch meats and sausages and bacons and all that jazz. Some of your proteins have mercury in them. Some of them are super duper high in fat. So you're choosing them and you're keeping them balanced, something very moderate. Don't feel like it has to be something you go, full-fledged the whole way to the right with. It's just something that you want to be focused on. Do I have protein with breakfast? Do I have a protein with my lunch? Do I respond better if I have protein in the middle of the afternoon as opposed to with dinner? Is it better if I have it then? Do I feel better? Do I sleep better? There's no right answer. It's just it's who you are. Maybe when you exercise and how it makes you feel. Okay? And again, I mentioned that physical activity. The big thing there is if you're doing endurance activities in excess of 60 minutes a day. If you lift weights like you're supposed to and you do your external resistance training and all that good stuff, yeah, you need it, but no more than what's recommended in your everyday diet. It's one of those situations where if you're getting what you need, according to this equation, you probably don't need anything extra than that 360 days out of 365. Okay? Number 3 there, is a whole grain really better? This is a huge area of confusion. Go ahead, have a seat for most people. Whole grain is different than multigrain. And when you look at the advertising out in the supermarket, it's very confusing. Lots of things are labeled multigrain, and few things are labeled whole grain, and a few things truly are 100% whole grain. And what I mean by that is 100% whole grain is going to be something like the examples that I have listed. Quinoa, brown rice, wheat berries, something along those lines. Bulgur is another good example of a whole grain. Something that's made from flour is no longer a whole grain. Now those products are going to be labeled 51% whole grain. You're going to see that in some of your breads. You're going to see that in some of your macaroni products and your noodles. You're going to see that in breakfast cereals sometimes, if they're milled breakfast cereals. Once you've broken the grain apart, it's no longer whole. Okay, now it's parts of a whole grain, and it might be higher in some parts than in others, but it's no longer a true whole grain. Now, instead of being 100% whole grain, it's more like 51% whole grain, and they're allowed to label it as such. It can say whole grain, and then in very small print, you'll see 51%.
Is that like the children's cereals that General Mills puts whole grain on their box?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Or like on the, I think of like the Barilla pastas, or who's the other big brand? The Dreamfields brand, or Healthy Harvest is another one. If you look in their fine print, it'll say it's semolina flour, and then it'll say 51% whole grain. Not 50, but 51%. Once it hits the 51%, from a marketing standpoint, they're allowed to label that as a whole grain product.
And with bread, the whole wheat flour?
Mm-hmm. That'll say 100% stone ground whole wheat flour. It doesn't claim to be a whole grain. It's telling you that that flour was milled from 100% whole grain. Okay? But when you look at the breads, that's an interesting point. If you look at, say, Pepperidge Farms or Arnold's or whatnot, they will oftentimes say multigrain, not whole grain. And again, like, people are sort of sold on that. If it has 10 or 12 or 15 grains, it must be better. If it has oatmeal on top, it's got to be good for me, right? And the truth of the matter is they can be 10, 12, or 15 refined grains. There's nothing whole about it. They can throw as many like bits of oat or corn or rice or whatever they want in there to bring that number up and make it look better from a marketing standpoint. So just buyer beware. I mean, I'm not telling you not to eat them. I'm just saying don't eat them assuming that you're eating something that's fantastic.
So when you're buying bread,
Mm-hmm.
you should say...
The first ingredient, yeah. Well, enriched isn't necessarily bad, because enriched might mean that they put something like iron in it, or they put something like niacin in it, or riboflavin, and then that's not necessarily a bad thing. What you're really looking for is that very first ingredient in the ingredient list is going to say something to the effects of like 100% stone ground whole wheat. If it says that, you're on the right track. The other thing you can typically look at is per 70 calorie slice, you want to see roughly 3 to 4 grams of fiber and roughly 3 to 4 grams of protein. If you see those numbers in that ratio, 70 calories, 3 to 4 grams of fiber, 3 to 4 grams of protein, you've got a whole grain product. And ironically, if you look at some of those, the big breads, I call them like bread on steroids, that have these ginormous slices that have oatmeal on top and flax seeds sprinkled into the crust and everything else, sometimes their numbers are really very low for the number of calories per slice that you're getting. Okay, so just kind of pay attention to that.
You just bought these wraps that have net carbs.
Mm-hmm.
Something like 10 net carbs. What is a net carb?
Well, net carbs is illegal, so they shouldn't even have that out there right now.
They sell it at Costco.
That was totally banned like maybe 5 years ago. That was during the Atkins revolution. And net carbs means that they used to be allowed to put the total number of carbohydrates less the grams of fiber. So if they put a synthetic fiber in, like AKA Metamucil, okay, into this product, or psyllium fiber, they can subtract 30 grams of carbohydrates from 15 grams of fiber and have a net carb at 15. They're not supposed to do that because it's not diabetic friendly. It's misleading to the consumer. But there are a couple of companies that still, I guess they just pay the fine and move on. I don't know. But yeah, there is a definite difference there, and be looking out for that kind of thing. Okay. Also, I want to emphasize with the whole grains that this is sort of a side note, there's a difference between carbohydrate and starch. Does everybody know that? Carbohydrate is an umbrella term for a macronutrient. In other words, there are fats, there's protein, and there's carbohydrates. And then underneath those terms are a breakdown. And for instance, underneath carbohydrates is fruit and vegetables and your dairy products and starches. So when they're saying in your handout to make half of your carbohydrate servings from whole grains, I think what they really meant to say was your starches. Because they don't mean replace your fruits and vegetables, that would normally be in your carbohydrates with whole grains. I don't think they mean that. I think they understand that there's a difference. Any questions with that one? No? Okay, good. Moving on to the dairy. Dairy is also another sort of a little bit of an enigma. Officially, dairy is something that originates from a milk product. If it originates from milk, it can be classified as a dairy. That is in line with like the mypyramid.gov kind of thing. From a nutritional standpoint, you have to be a little more wary, okay? You need vitamin D to absorb calcium, okay? It's essential. You're not going to absorb calcium if you don't have vitamin D, which is why by law, all milk, unless you're buying raw milk from an organic farmer, has both vitamin A and vitamin D in it, because that's the law. The law says if they're going to sell milk, it must have vitamin A and it must have vitamin D in it. And this is so that when you're feeding it to young children and you're thinking you're doing a good thing, you truly are, and you're absorbing it and your bones are getting stronger, all right? Unfortunately, when it comes to things, and I love this handout because it spends a lot of time talking about basically milk and yogurt. And really, when you look at the world of dairy, those are the two things you're looking at. You're looking at milk and you're looking at yogurt. Those are the two things that are going to have the greatest likelihood for the vitamin D content. Always in milk, again, unless you're buying raw milk. And not always in yogurt, but I would say 75% of the time. Okay, Greek yogurt, unless you're buying a Yoplait or a Dannon brand, does not have any of the vitamin D in it. Store brands, Surefine, the Giant brand, they, for whatever reason, the generic brands never have vitamin D in them. I don't get that, but that's how it is. If you buy Dannon or Yoplait or Light and Healthy or Light and Lively or any of those kinds, they're going to have a vitamin D content. If you're not eating a yogurt with vitamin D, it falls under sort of a dessert category. You're not really getting the benefit there that you think you're probably getting. And most of us don't eat yogurt because it's incredibly yummy. We eat yogurt because we're thinking we're making our bones a little healthier and that we're getting our dairy servings in. And you're not wrong. And if you're taking a multivitamin, you might be getting enough vitamin D. Absolutely. I'm not saying you're not. Just be cautious. Don't buy Surefine yogurt thinking you're fully insured there and you're not, because you're only getting half the package. Okay? And when it comes to things like cheeses, again, like on the food pyramid, yeah, they're definitely a dairy. In the world of nutrition, they're definitely more of a protein, because there's no vitamin D in cheese. There's no vitamin D in cottage cheese. There's no vitamin D in ricotta cheese. Cheeses are definitely more of they're better in terms of protein sources than they are dairy. Okay? All right. And then portion sizes. Everybody hates the food pyramid because it emphasizes portion sizes. And again, I think people are afraid of being hungry. They're looking at this teeny little portion of pasta, they're looking at this teeny little portion of meat, and they're saying, it cannot really be a portion because I'm really going to be hungry. One of the things I always tell folks, including my own clients, is that if you're going to look at that and you're going to take the time to learn the portion sizes, take the time to learn how many portion sizes you get. Nowhere is it written that we all get a half a cup of pasta and that's it. A half a cup is indeed a portion size, but we might get 2 or 3 portion sizes, depending on who we are and what our weight loss goals are, and if we're diabetic or, our cholesterol numbers. We get more than 1 portion size. So don't look at that and say, oh my gosh, this is too little. I'm going to go hungry. I can't pay any attention to this nonsense. I'm just going to, do my own thing. It's there as a point of reference. And I listed here 4 tangible, if you would, examples of what portion sizes look like in the real world. And you can reference these on websites and you'll find 100 different things. You'll see computer mouses for a half cup. You'll see light bulbs for a half a cup. But these are just some kind of a reminder that you can, if you're eating out, sort of take a look at what you're eating and say, this is about this. Fish is a checkbook. It's not the deck of cards, because fish is leaner. And so you get a longer, bigger portion of that. And it's all basically geared around the number of calories that you're getting for that food. So it's very much a generalization. Okay? It's just a guide. Don't take it to heart, but use it as a guide. okay? The other thing I will say about portion sizes is that the manufacturer's portion size is not in line with this. Okay, this is in line with the USDA. The manufacturer's portion size can be anything they want it to be. Okay, so if you're looking at Kashi breakfast cereal and you really want to eat it, and the Kashi company is trying to make their, I don't know, select their harvest with strawberries or whatever, autumn harvest, look good in numbers on their panel, on their nutrition facts panel, they will reduce the size of their portion to make those numbers look savory to the consumer. Okay, so you might only be getting a quarter cup of cereal, but my gosh, it says I only am eating 80 calories. This is great. This is an awesome cereal. And you pour a quarter cup and you eat 3 bites and you're not, you're like, okay, maybe this wasn't so great after all. But that's what you have to do. They're not looking at this from, a food standpoint or food pyramid standpoint. They're looking at this from how do I sell this product? How do I make these numbers on the side of this box look as appealing to the consumer as humanly possible? And what portion size do I have to stick on there to make that happen? Okay, so what marketing and what the companies do with their portion sizes is completely independent from what the food pyramid portion sizes are, to make things even that much more complicated. Okay. A couple other things here I have listed. When you are limiting your portion sizes, always remember that, and it has been for about the last 10 years, the recommendation is to eat smaller meals more frequently. I think I may have mentioned this the last time I was here. Your body doesn't work retroactively, okay? So eating large sums of food to make up for what you haven't eaten earlier in that day is not going to get you great results. It is not going to increase your metabolism. It is not going to, yield you weight loss. Instead, it is going to yield you fat gain, and you will just be hungry most of the time. And then when you eat, you will overeat and then feel uncomfortable and be diagnosed with reflux disease and everything else. So always eat smaller portions more frequently. And when you're looking at this teeny little portion of food and you're thinking, I'm never going to be full on this, you don't have to be full. You just have to get to the next 2 or 3 hours. Is what you just ate sufficient to get you the next couple of hours until it's time to eat again? You don't have to be stuffed. That's a feeling most Lancaster Countyans like. They like to feel stuffed. We had some friends in from Tennessee, and she said, I have never seen so many big people, and B, so many buffets. I said, I know. The whole county's like this. She's like, this is unbelievable. Like, there's a Mr. Sticky's at the Tourist Bureau. I'm like, I know. Can you believe it? She's like, no. I know. Well, I guess it's our job security. And then I took her downtown to market. She's like, I think there are more between the coffee and the pastry stands than there are produce stands. She said there are like 5 or 6 big produce stands, and everybody else is selling dog treats and desserts and bread. I said, I know. Isn't that funny? She's like, yeah, I don't think I ever... She used to be from the area and then moved out. She said, I don't think I ever realized how unique Lancaster County is in that respect. And I said, So don't feel stuffed. Just feel comfortable, okay? And a lot of times you'll feel better if you're just comfortable. Your brain performs if you're just comfortable. Your body moves more fluidly if you're just comfortable. If you're stuffed, you don't feel like moving at all. You feel like vegging out. You feel ew. So try and keep that in mind. You're not eating enough to fill you. You're eating enough to satisfy you. Okay? Questions or comments on that? No? Is there anything that anybody read on here that they're unclear about?
Remember to front load the calories?
Oh yeah, I can definitely. That's about the body not working retroactively. Try and get your calories in at the beginning of the day when we're working and we're most active. Likewise, if you have anybody in your family that works second shift, it's better if they're eating most of their calories between, say, 12 p.m. and, say, 10 p.m. Don't wait until you get home at the end of your day to decide that you're going to eat and come unleashed in your pantry. That happens all the time. I think it happens to anybody in the medical field. It happens to school teachers, and we like groom our kids for it, because we deprive them of food all day long at school, and they get off the bus at 4 o'clock and they are insatiably hungry because they ate lunch at 10:30 in the morning. You know, and then we're asking them to do well in their sports, and we're asking them to pay attention in class and not fall asleep. I think it's ridiculous. But anyway, that's just my soapbox. All I'm saying is eat in the beginning of your day when your brain has to function. If you're an AM exerciser or you even exercise right after work, don't wait until you get home from your exercise or the club to decide that you're suddenly going to eat. It's a terrible way to treat your body. Feed it when it needs it at the beginning of your day. It's better, I'm sure you've all heard it, eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, dinner like a pauper. You ever heard that saying? Okay, nutrition geek, sorry. But yeah, that's what you're doing. I mean, you're trying to get those nutrients and those calories into the body when you're going to use them. Not at the end of the day when you're just going to sit and watch Jeopardy. You know what I mean? Like it's not benefiting you at that point. At that point, all you're doing is storing every extra calorie as a source of body fat, which most of us spend our days exercising to get off, not to add to. All right? Yeah, always, 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 if you can eat. I always tell people, if you're going to eat donuts, eat them at the beginning of the day. You know, don't try and be good and dance around everything you want to eat all day long and then come home and just come unraveled. Because that's what happens. You know, you're in your protected little environment with your little lunch and everybody did really well, you know, and you ate the oatmeal that you were supposed to eat for breakfast and you ate your salad that you were supposed to eat for lunch, and you get home and somebody implies that they are hungry for pizza and everybody's in the car, you know, because that sounds like a great idea. You were so good all day. You should have had pizza for lunch. Tim Powell still jokes with me about that because he walked in here that one day for the lunch and learn with 3 pieces of pizza. I was like, what are you doing? He's like, you told me to eat them at lunch. Okay, I did. But you know, that's what I'm getting at. Don't eat that kind of stuff at late at night. You're the least active then. It doesn't make any sense. Okay? Anything else that you read either on my handout or this handout that seemed fuzzy or just too good to be true? Anything like that? Are you all turning in these diet logs? Yeah? Is it making a difference? Is anybody losing weight from it? Yeah? Yeah. I'm sure I mentioned this the last time I was here, but there's documentation saying if you journal what you eat, your results are twice as good. It's worth it for a little bit of pen and paper. Absolutely.
If anything, it just makes you more aware of what you're
eating. Yeah, and I always tell my clients, and I'm sure they want to punch me when I say this, but I don't care, that keeping a food log is like keeping a check register. It's exactly the same thing. It's that constant awareness of where things stand. How much did I have? How much did I use? What do I have left? If you don't keep a tally of it, how do you know? You don't have any idea. Did you eat it? Did you think about eating it? You know, my favorite is when somebody shoves like a 300-calorie piece of cake in their mouth and says, I don't remember did I eat that? I'm thinking, for 300 calories, it should be remarkable. You should be able to tell me all about it. You know, was it buttercream icing? Did it have confetti in the cake? I mean, give me something. Don't question whether you ate it. That's a 3-mile run. That should not happen. So it's like keeping a check register. I think it's incredibly important, without a doubt. Any other questions? Okay. Looks like I'll see you guys back here sometime in October for alcohol. Just in time for the holidays.
That's why we
It's funny, 2 of my other corporate accounts are doing alcohol in December too. Yeah, it's a big thing. People like to drink.
sugary drink.